Now, I want to ask you about a couple of terms. Just reading through your Wikipedia, they talk about you being the godfather of hipsterdom. I can see these sort of correlations, but obviously you are not the guy who I would associate with hipster culture these days. Um, what are your thoughts on that initially?
I am to hipsters what Malcolm McLaren is to punk. I was there on day one. I think it happened because I was doing this column called The Do's and Don'ts, and it was basically the do's and don'ts of being a hipster. And when you send out a rule book on a daily basis, you end up creating a subculture. So in the early 2000s, Vice and my column and our articles and our parties and the sort of scene reporting of New York and LA created hipsters. And they were less political back then, and it was like white jeans and ironic T-shirts and Coke and booze and orgies and stuff. And then it kind of morphed and it sort of split into kind of biker wannabes on one hand of the machismo scale, and then these frail metrosexuals who wanted to wear makeup and wear a man bun.
Because that's how I define it. I have such a hard time with it because I always identify hipsters as the guy with the man bun who makes my coffee.
Yeah, that's the recent incarnation. Is that the word? But initially, it was more like punk rock kind of skateboardery. Like there's Ninja Sonic was a good example. He had a song, I'm a tight pants wearing ass nigga, again and again.
Yeah.
That was kind of what it was. It was more Jackass at the beginning. And then, of course, when I left the helm, it was taken over by feminists and ruined it because women ruin everything.
All right, we'll get onto that in a moment. But first I want to ask you about you've traditionally referred to as alt-right, but now consider yourself new right. Again, these are terms that I hear, but because I have a job, I don't get to spend 24/7 listening to bickering on Twitter. Can you define what, because traditional alt-right, people say, oh, it's the new right, oh, it's infused with racism. Can you define what alt-right is supposed to be?
Alt-right started out, Richard Spencer started the term, and it was the alternative right, and it was meant to be basically the new right. And it did start out kind of benign. And then I don't know if the guy is a Fed or he's getting paid, but it got darker and darker. It got more about anti-Semitism, more about racism, more about white identity politics. And today, the alt-right, which, by the way, is a tiny sliver of the right. Mainstream media keeps trying to pretend that Trump is alt-right and Steve Bannon and me are alt-right. It is a tiny sliver, and half of them are kidding. No, a third of them are kidding. A third of them are feds who are just pretending, and a third of them are mentally ill nutbars who generally want a Fourth Reich. They generally want World War II. They definitely want to gas the Jews and all that. We're talking about maybe hundreds of people in a population over 400 million. So a totally irrelevant group, but they are very similar to Antifa in that they are atheists. They are socialists. They don't want democracy. They don't like Trump, by the way.
Now, this is alt-right or new right? How are we defining this?
The alt-right. The new right that's an old term. It was around in Australia in the 80s, I believe. If you look up new right on Wikipedia, you'll see it's always been sort of a libertarian conservative thing that's socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Basically normal stuff, like your dad. Your dad is new right. Everyone's dad is new right.
Okay. So who would actually be alt-right then? So because all of this is still, when you apply it to American politics, is about sort of the Republican Tea Party. So where would you find sort of an atheist anti-Trump alt-right, considering alt-right came to
Richard
power
Spencer.
on the back of Trump? So that's it. So it really has no real connotations then to
Richard Spencer is one. Chris Cantwell is one. I guess Jared Taylor maybe, but not really. I think those guys like John Derbyshire and Peter Brimelow, they drift more into the new right. They're not that hung up on racial politics. I mean, I guess Jared Taylor is. But Jared Taylor, he doesn't want blacks to go back to Africa like Richard Spencer does. Richard Spencer wants an all-white America. But it's just like the way Antifa hogs up so much of the political discourse with their bullhorns and their yelling. It's a tiny, tiny group representing a massive swath of the political discourse. They don't exist. Okay. They don't matter. They don't have political sway. They don't have kids, and they never will. I don't even know if they believe what they say.